Welcome to the Ring Spaces studio in Neil on Business. Neil on Business is a show where we dig deep into the entrepreneurial mindset and try to discover what makes business success, from discipline to disruption. I'm your host, Neil Darling, entrepreneur, father, husband, and straight shooter when it comes to what it really takes to win in business. Each week, I'll plan to sit down with movers and shakers ranging from former Marines, business leaders, bold thinkers, and disruptors who traded uniforms for boardrooms and built successful businesses and brought the attitude and fortitude required for success. If you're looking for real conversations about leadership, grit, and building something that lasts, you're in the right place. Let's get to work. All right, well, welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, today this is our new podcast. It's what we call Neil on Business. I'm Neil Darling. I am the owner of Ring Spaces in town. Ring Spaces is, I think, the leading, fair to say, in Fredericksburg, co-working, meeting, and events facility. And we're launching this podcast, and I thought it would be interesting to do about 5 to 7 of these this month. I'm really focusing on interesting people in town who have a business background, but I'm certainly focused on ones that actually have a Marine background. So,
Okay.
Nate, welcome.
Thank you.
First of all, we have a gift for you, just because I know we might talk about bourbon a little bit.
A little bit. Yep.
Yeah, and with your networking side, this is the finest cigar that I know in town.
All right.
It's my preference. It's Maduro. It's dark. It's a couple hours, so you better just carve some time out.
All right.
Called the Digger. You can get it in town down there in Caroline Street.
That's great. Thank you.
Awesome store. So really, thanks for coming today.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I'm just wondering, Nate, I know you've been around for a while, but how long have you been in Fredericksburg?
So I grew up in Stafford, lived in Maryland for about 12 years, and then moved back here about 6 years ago.
Okay, so from the beginning, we'll get right to what high school in Stafford? Where'd you go?
So actually, I moved to Fauquier County when I was in middle school. So I graduated from Liberty High School at 17.
Oh, okay, cool. All right,
Yeah.
cool. So you didn't go to college?
I did, yeah.
Right away?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Oh.
So I actually did a year and a half at Virginia Tech.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So when I was at Liberty in high school, I was big in the ag program there.
Yeah.
And so I went to Virginia Tech as a forestry major.
Yeah.
I was going to be a park ranger or something like that, or a fire jumper out west. And I got into my major related classes and started finding it quite boring.
Yeah.
Didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I'd also enlisted in the Marine Corps before I went. And so I kind of decided to focus on my Marine Corps career after that year and a half Virginia Tech.
Now, are you a Hollywood Marine or you're Paris Island? Like
Paris Island, yeah, the good kind. Yeah, yeah.
Is there still a big competition?
Oh, yeah. It's always a feud. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be forever. Yeah.
So when you went in the Marines, like, what was your focus?
So I was a 1341, which is a heavy equipment mechanic.
Yeah.
So I worked on construction equipment, bulldozers, front end loaders, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was assigned to 4th CEB Combat Engineer Battalion, which is out of Towson, Maryland. It's about half an hour north of Baltimore, and I got to spend all my 8-year career out of that duty station.
Okay, so you ended up going to war?
I did. I got one deployment to Afghanistan.
Now I noticed on your bio, I was reading on you a little bit, but you had a huge group of people. So tell us a little bit like what you did with your group. The 200 Marines?
In Afghanistan. Yeah. So I was, at that time, at the end of 2011, the war was starting to kind of wind down over there. And it was kind of, even to begin with for reservists, it was kind of difficult to find a deployment. It might sound weird to people that Marines are looking for a deployment, but that's really what a lot of Marines do, that we join to be able to serve our country and put all of our skills to use that the Marine Corps trained us to do, right? And so I was lucky enough to get onto a deployment, but I was in the headquarters group for this deployment. So it was myself and the leadership team. So we had a captain, a lieutenant, a first sergeant, a master sergeant, and then the acting company gunny, and then we had 3 sergeants and a corporal. And so we were in charge of 5 platoons across the Helmand province.
Okay.
So we had Marines attached to infantry battalions. So we're being a combat engineer battalion. We had a few general missions, right? So we would attach to infantry battalions and we would build stuff for them, right? So we were the ones, our Marines were the ones setting up HESCO. You're familiar with HESCO, right?
Yeah.
So it's basically like a wire mesh lined with a matting. You unfold it, lies flat, you unfold it and you fill it with sand, and that's how we make the bases out there. So our Marines were in charge of that. So I spent about half my time in the office doing reports and checking up on stuff. And the other half I spent out either filling in as an operator on a mission or checking on junior Marines, making sure they're fixing gear. Because sometimes, there'd be one mechanic attached to 15, 20 pieces of gear. And, if it's a PFC or a Lance Corporal, they're new out of school. They don't have all the experience and stuff. So I'd go help them make sure all of our equipment was up and running as best we could.
Yeah, interesting. Now I hear that the Marines have the equipment, but the Army moves everything. Is that true?
No, we moved ourselves.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the big difference, I guess you could say, between the Army and the Marine Corps is much smaller than the Army, and we're much more of a kind of a seizure arm. So we'll go in and seize the place, take it, clear it, and the Army is more of an occupation force. So they'll come in, establish their bases, and keep areas that we've cleared.
Right. So under fire, is it IED threats or mortar threats, or there?
Yeah, we definitely had IED threat.
Any war stories for us?
Nothing too crazy. Luckily, we did lose Marines that were in our charge. Yeah, the IED was the heaviest threat there. It's pretty crazy watching the evolution of that whole war and IEDs in general. We spent millions and billions of dollars developing Humvees and MRAPs and mine rollers and stuff to mitigate these IEDs, right? So in the newer vehicles, the MRAPs and stuff, they have a V-shaped hull, so explosions go out away from the vehicle. Well, when this first started happening at the beginning of the war, we would drive onto an IED and it would blow up right underneath that vehicle. We created what they called mine rollers, basically a set of wheels that would attach to the front of the vehicle and set that off on that instead of the truck. Spent millions of dollars developing that. They took about 10 feet of cable, wire, 3 cents or whatever, and just extended that explosive away from the pressure plate so that it was detonating under the trucks again.
Okay.
And so they have a lot of ingenuity.
Yeah.
They know how to work around all of our money and gear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. They say the first interaction with the enemy is best laid plans.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Were you ever exposed in an MRAP to an IED explosion? Or?
Not personally IEDs. I took fire while I was there, but luckily no IEDs. So I watched plenty of them go off, but luckily not near me.
So how long was the tour? How long were you in Afghanistan?
7 months.
7 months. Okay.
Yep.
So it wasn't a full year. You didn't have to do a full year.
Yeah, the Army typically does a year turn. It's always kind of weird to me, right? They have a way bigger force. They have more people to kind of churn, but yeah, the way the Army operates, they usually do year deployments. Marine Corps is typically 7 to 8 months.
So kind of roll back. So you obviously did boot camp Paris Island. What other training do you have to do?
So we go to boot camp and then we get out and we go to MCT, Marine Combat Training. So that kind of gives your basic infantry training, right? So every Marine is a rifleman.
Yep.
So we train on the rifle at boot camp, and then we go and do some advanced weapons training, some more hiking training, that kind of stuff at MCT for a few weeks after boot camp.
Okay.
And then after that, you go out to your MOS school, your job school. So mine was MCT is in North Carolina. So I went down there for that. And then I went out to Missouri for the mechanics basics course.
How did you end up picking an MOS? What you went from forestry and then you said, hey, I want to be
mechanic, right?
Yeah, in construction some way. Or
yeah.
What did you think the future was?
So I'd always loved working on stuff. So growing up, I had my contractor's license, and my buddy and I were always working on our vehicles ourselves. And so I always loved that kind of stuff. And going in as a reservist, I was able to kind of pick from the duty stations that I wanted based on that MOS. So it's kind of a weird thing, right? I went and visited my unit before I went to boot camp.
Okay.
Which isn't typical for active duty, but yeah, I've just always loved fixing stuff and tinkering.
So you were always reserve? Did you go over to active duty? I guess you transition over, or did you just were active reserve?
Yeah. So I was under a reserve contract, so I had an 8-year contract that I signed, and then through that we can get activated, right? So when I was deployed to Afghanistan, I was active duty, and then reserve units have pools of money that they'll get sometimes to activate reservists to help them fulfill functions that they don't have enough full-time staff to do.
Yeah.
So once I decided I didn't want to be a forestry major anymore, I would spend probably a year and a half or so, 2 years, just kind of hopping orders at the unit there. So we do 4 months on, 2 months, 5 months on, a month off, something like that.
So you were in Afghanistan for 7 months, but yeah, how long before were you trained before you actually deployed? And then was that the only place you deployed, or did you go to the Middle East as well?
Yeah, that was the only place I deployed to. Yeah. So we had multiple training sessions prior to that, right? So I got into my unit 2007. We keep up with training at our reserve unit. We do our 2 weeks in the summer, so we're using our MOS skills for that. And then before you deploy too, you do a pre-deployment workup. So we get on North Carolina and make sure we're up on all of our swim quals and medical and all kind of stuff.
Yep. And so what point did you, and again, you and I've actually worked together. I haven't talked to a lot of people, but I was like, hey, I'm in a jam. And it was not a financial jam, but just, calculating complicated real estate valuations and values and stuff.
Right.
And I called you and you were like, came over immediately, and totally helped me out. It was such a great thing. But
yeah, absolutely.
So what did the Marine Corps do really for you towards the future? If there are Marines that are going to be listening to this, what advice would you have? What skills did you take? Was it grit? What other things happened that enabled you to kind of progress when you left the Marine Corps?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the big things would be just confidence in myself. I don't need to tell you, right, as an entrepreneur, people are always telling you that it's not going to succeed, but perseverance is probably the most important thing an entrepreneur can have to be successful. And I think the Marine Corps does a good job of instilling that in people and drawing the best out of people that they have inside them.
Is that an easy transition from the Marine Corps back to
back to civilian life?
Applying those skills?
No. Yeah. I think especially the longer you're in, a lot of people struggle with going from the military to the civilian world. Reservists have a little bit easier, right? Because you have a civilian job already. But active duty guys and folks that get out and try to transition have a hard time sometimes, because the military, it can be very rigid, right? They have everything laid out for you: housing, food, job, what to do. There's someone there almost all the time, making sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And so if you're not a self-starter, or you're not, you can't just do the work you need to do and stuff like that, it's kind of hard to come out and you're just dropped in the civilian world and you got to figure everything out yourself.
So you came back from Afghanistan.
Yep.
When was that?
2012.
2012. So we're 13 years ago.
Yep.
So what did you do next? So you come back and you immediately go into business, or did you get a job, or what did you do?
Yeah, so I got a job. So I got out and I was the maintenance supervisor at a eyeglass manufacturing plant.
Okay.
So that was up in Maryland. We were owned by United Healthcare. So we did all of the prescription eyeglasses for United Healthcare across the country.
Yeah.
So I came on as their maintenance supervisor. They asked me to stand up a safety team there. So I did that for 3 years and then took a position as an assistant plant manager at a lumber press treating plant. Mm-hmm. So if you go to Home Depot and buy a ground contact press treated 4x4, we were the ones that put the chemical into it.
Right.
So I did that for 2 years. The last year I was actually running the plant. Ended up leaving there and then decided to go back and finish my degree. So in 2017, I was a stay-at-home dad to my 3 kids. Mm-hmm. And I went back to school online and finished my degree. I figured, I was living in Northern Virginia, previously cleared veteran. Mm-hmm. Cybersecurity would be great, right? Get a job like that.
Yep.
So I finished my degree and then 82 job applications later and one phone interview. And,
easy peasy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Cybersecurity. Yeah.
Wasn't easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that didn't end up panning out, and kind of on the back burner since high school, where I had my Class C contractor's license, and my buddy and I, a lot of what we were doing was sub work for flippers in the area.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my first intro to real estate investing. And I kind of, on the knowledge side, I kind of kept up with it over the years. Folks are familiar with biggerpockets.com. That's one of the biggest information sources for real estate investing. So I was keeping up with that, listening to podcasts and stuff like that. And so when the cybersecurity piece didn't pan out, I was like, this is the best opportunity I'm going to have to try and do something that I feel like I'm passionate about that could help change the trajectory of my family.
Yeah. Okay. So at what point did you get married? Were you married in the Marine Corps when you were away?
Yeah, 2013 I got married.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
And then you have 3 kids.
We have 3 kids now. Yeah.
How old are they now?
11, 9, and 7.
I have 5.
You're right. Yeah.
30 to 21.
There you go.
I mean, 31, 21. So totally can relate. So anything from, and I did a session last month here in Fredericksburg with a Font, and he has a great networking session. I saw Joel there actually yesterday.
Right.
And I kind of talked about, from an entrepreneur standpoint, failure. Everybody's talking about, success. It's actually just, and I also talked about the impact of failure has, not on you necessarily, it definitely has on you, but also on your family.
Yeah.
So do you have any failures that
absolutely, yeah.
So let's talk about the dark days. So that's funny. So what happened with you as far as from a failure standpoint, and how did you handle it?
Yeah, it's it can be tough for sure. I mean, as an entrepreneur, I talked with the wife. We decided that real estate investing has been a passion of mine for a long time, and we decided to, let me have a shot at it. I looked at so many deals, right? And I'd spend hours on underwriting a deal, and then something would happen, it would fall apart. And, sometimes in my mind, that deal was already done and that money was in the bank account, and we were good. And then when it falls apart, heartbreak and dismay, and, did I do something wrong or stuff like that, And I think that's why perseverance is probably the biggest thing that entrepreneur needs, is because you're going to fail. But it's important to remember that if you're failing, that means you're trying.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of people out there that aren't trying. So as long as you keep trying, you're doing the ethical thing, you're staying knowledgeable in your industry, just keep trying. You'll put yourself in the situation where you're going to succeed eventually.
So let's talk about ethics a little bit. So sometimes, at least I'm part salesman, you drive forward, you paint a picture, you put somebody on a journey, maybe you oversell a little bit. How does ethics play, and how do you balance ethics with, success?
Right. I think personally, and definitely heavily influenced by the Marine Corps, ethics and integrity are probably my number one things, right? If you're an entrepreneur or whatever you're doing in business, or even if you have a job, if you fail at your job or your business fails, your integrity is really the last thing that you can have and hold on to if everything else around you, crumbles away. And that integrity can allow you to do and start something else or find another thing where you can get to. But if you completely lack integrity and ethics, and you're burning bridges at every relationship you have, and no one in town trusts you, you're not going to be able to be successful.
So where's the segue with you? And obviously you got a couple deals done. Was it flipping? Was it just renovating houses and waiting 2 years and selling them? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah. So when I started, I wholesaled vacant land.
Okay.
So wholesaling, for anyone that doesn't know, basically I would market to, and I specialized in vacant land. One of the reasons I did that is because there wasn't a whole lot of people doing that. Everyone, because of HGTV, everyone was doing houses and flipping, right? But vacant land, a lot of people were scared of or didn't know what to do with. And so I would market to those, to vacant landowners. There's tons of softwares out there you can get to scrape lists and stuff. So I'd market to them. And then if someone responded, I'd say, hey, I've got a 5-acre parcel. I'd be like, oh, it's great. How much would you like for it? Come up with their price. And then on the back end, right, I would know what a builder would pay for that lot to put a house on it, or I know what I could sell that lot for retail, just on the MLS or Facebook Marketplace or something like that. And so I would put that under contract, say a 5-acre parcel, I put it under contract for 30 grand. I know I could sell it for 40 somewhere.
Right.
And then I would make that difference and then cover closing costs and that kind of stuff.
Much more straightforward. Now, I noticed something with maybe related to that, but I've seen where you have these storage units come up. And the storage unit, is that a strategy for making vacant land profitable until Chick-fil-A comes along and says, now I need, certainly in Stafford, you can see it. I've been in Stafford since 1996.
Right.
And I remember we were out in Hartwood, Western Hartwood. You could throw a stone to Fauquier. But I remember it used to be 25 minutes to the grocery store and straight shot, no traffic lights. It was like, but it does seem like some of the places where those storage units were are now high dollar retail.
Right.
Is that something that's done?
So there's kind of two avenues right there, kind of run next to each other. Self-storage is an amazing asset class. It's definitely gained popularity in the last 5 years or so. The reason it's a great asset class is because it's low overhead, and Americans love buying stuff and holding on to it.
Yeah.
And it's out of sight, out of mind too, right? Kind of like a subscription basis, Lord knows how many people have how many subscriptions on their credit cards that just get paid, right?
Yeah.
But that can also be a path of progress parcel, right? So path of progress is where you see, or there's some development maybe happening in the next year or two, go buy some land around it, and then hope or market it or whatever that parcel, when that comes and that value rises significantly because of that new build, then you can sell that parcel or develop it. Yeah.
So are you still looking for projects with vacant land, or is that still sort of in your portfolio?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I look at basically anything, which a lot of people tell you not to do that. They tell you to focus. But with the meetup group that I have, right, I do a monthly meetup group for investors. People will bring me stuff and ask me to weigh in on it or help them find someone that can help them with it and stuff like that. So it helps me kind of keep a pulse on all the different kind of markets in the region for investing. And then I'm also on the board of directors for the Builders Association. So I'll look at land and talk with some builders and stuff to see if we can do some projects together.
Yeah, that's great. Not only that, you're involved in the restaurant business.
I'm adjacent, yeah. So so Riffian, right? So I do my own personal investing, and then I consult for the Riffian group in town.
I could be wrong here, but I saw you on William Street, and we didn't know each other that long, but I remember seeing you and I said hello, and I could have swore you're carrying two things of glasses from one there was something going on.
Oh yeah,
Thought was very blue collar, and I was like, hey, it's not like opening one restaurant, but and I know people tend to fantasize about the restaurant business. I don't know why.
Right.
So what is it about the restaurant business what's the good and bad and the ugly about the restaurant business?
Yeah, I mean the restaurant business can be tough for sure. It's roughly a 75 to 80% failure rate inside of 18 months. A lot of the times though, I think from the research I've done and what I've seen and stuff, it's usually there's a chef or cook or someone that can make some great dishes or can run a kitchen, but they don't know how to run a business successfully.
Yeah.
And so they'll open their restaurant and then just kind of focus and drill down on the kitchen and then forget about the rest of it, and it falls apart. But that's kind of where Riffian's a little different. So when we're doing a new concept, we have our VP of operations, David Stollard. He kind of sets the outline for the menu and the concept and the idea of what the restaurant we want to do. We'll implement it, and then we'll find a chef that can execute that concept. So we're not dependent on any of the staff there to have that restaurant operating. We can find new folks to do that. Where if it's the chef that is the owner and starts it, and they can't run the business and it fails, there's no coming back from that.
So if I was going to open a restaurant with a proper business plan, with a great chef, a lot of people would take that and not franchise it, but expand the same restaurant in other areas.
Right.
Why would you do different concepts in the same market?
Yeah, so we like different concepts typically because of their gaps in the market, right? So I make the joke that when David got here a few years ago, he kind of ate his way around Fredericksburg, right, and kind of saw what was here and the quality of it and that kind of stuff. And so, for example, our newest restaurant, the Port Osteria and Brewery, that's the only restaurant brewery in town. So we're making all our own beer there, and it's the only seafood concept in town, fully dedicated seafood restaurant. An oyster bar. So that wasn't here before. So that's the kind of stuff that we like to kind of target.
Do you not, I'm just asking, do they not compete with each other? I mean, are there scarce restaurant dollars? Are you not eating your own profits from one to the other?
No, the way we kind of view that is expanding our customer base, right? So if we have an Italian concept, an upper scale American concept, and our seafood concept, those are all different customer bases potentially, right? So by having all three of those, and especially geolocated pretty close to each other, all that's going to do is bring more people down to that area. And you could have people that we see it all the time, right? They'll go to the port and have some oysters and then go up on the Sky Bar and have a margarita and hang out.
Yeah. So what was the time frame on the acquisitions and improvement of the restaurant? So you have Castiglia's, you have Rebellion, and you have Port Osteria, and I know you have one up in Leesburg, Rebellion 2 up there, we'll say.
Yep.
When did you acquire those, or when did you build those out?
So that all happened before I came on. So, but it was about, I believe about 3 or 4 years ago when Joel Griffin is the founder of the company. So he started that. So the Riffian started with the investment funds, so Riffian Investments. Merger and acquisitions and government contracting is the world that Joel came from, and Victor Fuster, he runs our investment fund for us. They came from that background, so that's how they started. And then Joel got into the Rebellion concepts as a partner, and kind of realized some of the problems with the other partners, the way they were operating the businesses. Divested, he held on to the 2 that we have, and the other folks held on to the 3 or 4 that were left, which I think have all since shut down. And so those were the first 2 restaurants. And then the port took a while for permitting and rehab and stuff. So that was kind of going on in the background as well. And then we acquired Castiglia's and the Sky Bar, not this past October, but the October prior. So about 1.5 years we've had that.
So, okay, here's the big question. So how did you navigate COVID? Did you feel like, maybe it predates you, I'm not sure, but
yeah,
how did the restaurant business navigate COVID? And, again, if you have one consistent brand, which you don't, but one set of supplies, one set of suppliers, one set of labor, but you have, now you have 3, but at the time, we said maybe at 2. What did COVID do to you guys?
Yeah, so most of COVID did predate me coming into the company, but yeah, I mean, it's just trying to do outdoor seating as much as possible, pick up orders, that kind of stuff, online presence, just staying top of mind with folks. It was tough for sure. Yeah.
Well, I was fascinated not just with you guys, but the innovation that happened in the restaurant business. And I know Renato's, for example, when they, it was initially just, like a tent outside, and then it turned into this
nice patio now.
a major addition and really, really nice. And it's a feature. So that's the good sign. But should people that are looking at restaurants, should they plan for the next pandemic? I mean, what does that factor into the equation, that you're going to have a big cushion to make sure that you're ready for that?
I don't think so for the most part. I mean, if you're running a business, you typically want to have some sort of cash reserves, just like you do for your own personal budget. I don't think most business owners, even in the restaurant industry, are kind of thinking like there'd be another pandemic. I don't think that's not the typical sense I get. But I'm sure, as most things, that sticks in the back of the mind still for folks.
So people do say, and again, I don't understand necessarily, but they romanticize about owning a restaurant. What do you say to that?
So yeah, I love it. So I was brought in the company, right, to do real estate, but I love the fact that I'm affiliated with restaurants now, just because I'm a foodie. I love cooking and trying new stuff and everything. And I think that's the joy that a lot of restaurant owners get, right, when they put a beautiful concept together with a great menu, and they've got a chef that is killing it in the kitchen, and the wait staff is doing a great job of keeping the customers happy. Walking in there and seeing the smiles on those people's faces and hearing the stories of the great service that they had, or the great food they had, or I walked into port and I had octopus for the first time ever, or I had oysters for the first time ever, and it was great. And Will or Marcus came out and they talked to us about the oysters and explained the different flavors and stuff. Like, I think that's a lot of what drives restaurant owners to keep doing it.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of that. At least there historically in Fredericksburg, that level of service just wasn't there. So where do you think the restaurant business is going?
Well, I think it's going to keep exploding here for sure. We get approached sometimes for new restaurants coming in to see if we want to partner with them. There's tons of growth that's projected for our region. We see it all the time, and the DC bubble just keeps pushing out. And people are continuously looking for great experiences, right? Especially with these new generations coming up. They're very experience heavy. That's what they look for, good experiences, maybe not so much things as people used to as much. And so I expect more restaurants come to town. And if you can create a good experience with people, great customer service, good food, good drinks, and a great atmosphere, yeah, people are just going to keep eating it up, and no pun intended, and keep bouncing around trying all the new places.
So if somebody fantasizes about a restaurant but wants to lessen their risk, you guys have come up with something, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we'll definitely talk with folks, and if it makes sense, and we can partner with folks and help them get started, or even just suggestions of people they could talk to help them get started if they don't want to do a formal partnership.
It's not like an arbitrage, but is there like a fractional relationship? How does that work? Can you explain that?
Yeah, every situation is different, right? So it's not a cookie cutter thing, but just with any kind of business partnership, there's some sort of trade of products, services, experience that we can trade for equity in that business so they can execute, and vice versa, right there. If we partner with a new restaurant, they're extending our brand, and we're going to help them grow that in their business. And so it should be a mutual thing.
So if I wanted to get in the restaurant business and I'm a qualified investor, would it be worthwhile to talk with you and talk with your team?
Yes. So from the investment side too. Absolutely. Yeah. So investors, if they like the hospitality industry, they're looking for, to park some cash for a while. And yeah, absolutely. Anyone can come, and, I can offer equity in any of the 4 concepts that we have currently.
Okay, so is it like a fractional?
Yeah, yeah.
So do I own 4 restaurants?
Right.
So I love the concept. So I really want to break it out a little bit, because I don't want to be confused. People
you're good.
Going to say, hey, you're a qualified investor and you're looking for something a little different, or maybe you're like you said, you're a chef, and maybe you're coming out of culinary, and you want to be exposed. And again, I'm maybe not direct hands-on, but you want to be exposed to really 3 different concepts.
Mm-hmm.
Is that here's possible solution that would be, as opposed to putting your money in the market or Bitcoin or whatever.
Yep.
You partner up, and you actually would be exposed, at least on the business side, I imagine. So is there any disprove me here. Is there?
Yeah, no,
benefit
absolutely.
to that? Yeah.
Yeah, so you say, so we have the 4 concepts, right? So if you only like the port and you hate the rest of them, you can be an investor in just the port. If you want to look at all 4 of them, when you get into the overarching LLC investment levels, the threshold is higher. But yeah, no, absolutely, all that's on the table.
Yeah, I like it. So that's really, I think that would be smart. Saying, hey, before I put $1 million of my own money into, a concept, maybe I need to be a partner.
Yeah, partner with some experience. Yeah,
and then you get a lot of benefit out of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, roofing is cool like that. I was really excited when I joined them, when I was asked to join them, because we do have multiple options that we can show investors, right? So we have the fund, we have the 4 restaurants, we're doing real estate stuff. I like the wide berth of options.
So it does appear with Riffian, I know the offices are right there. It is a Fredericksburg focused company.
Mm-hmm.
Is it broader than that? I mean,
yeah. So Leesburg is our furthest concept right now.
Yeah.
We do look at concepts within an hour and a half or so. Projects and stuff like that. Just depends on the project and the scope. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. So that gets over to the real estate side, and that's where I met you. And one of the things that's most impressive about you, and I could ask anybody and they would nod and agree with me, is that you're an expert at networking.
Thank you.
I know, and everybody, yeah. So, we always kid, I go, is this networking or is this not working? Because
right,
you could spend a lot of time, and everybody says, oh, you got to just commit this redundant amount of time instead of doing business development, instead of knocking on doors, instead of doing a lot of other things.
Yep.
You're doing things. So what's your approach to network? And what's the good and the bad and the ugly of networking?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say the bad and the ugly probably together is what you're saying, the not working, right? So I see a lot of people will go to these networking groups, and there are tons of them just in Fredericksburg now, right? I
have several here, yeah.
Yeah, there's tons. And new ones starting all the time, which is great. I mean, I love networking, right? But a lot of people will show up to them and they'll go into with the mindset expecting the people in that room to do direct business with them and bring them leads and do that work kind of for them. But it's called networking, right? You have to work at it. You have to be intentional. The one-on-one conversations that you get, right? Usually what I do, I'll go to these networking meetings and I'll find people that I don't know and I'll sit down with them one-on-one. That's really where you get that power out of the networking. The more people that you know and that know you and what you do, that's more people out there. Hopefully you're bouncing around their brains sometime. And like for me, they're thinking about, they run into someone or a client or a customer or someone, and they're like, oh, I got this extra money or just sold my business or whatever. Like, oh, you can talk to Nate. He's got some options for you if you want.
Yeah.
So that's really the power of networking. But the bad and the ugly is when people either don't care about their job because they're working for a company and they're doing biz dev and they're just going to the networking meetings, having drinks, going to lunch, company credit card, that kind of stuff. But yeah, you have to be intentional about it.
So what's the best recipe for it? So you don't go there looking for leads. You go there, no quid pro quo. Everybody's looking for something in return.
Yeah.
So what's the recipe?
The way I go into it is I honestly, I really just sit down. I ask how I can help. Typically and it's for me too, right? It's human nature. If I go in, I talk to someone like, hey, how can I help you? What are you looking for right now? And because I've networked so heavily, I can usually do that. I can usually help that person or find someone that can help them or who they're looking for.
Right.
And so that helps show my integrity and my willingness to help that person, which I think typically lends them to be more open to hearing me when I kind of tell them what I'm looking for and what I do.
Give me a networking success story.
Probably one of the biggest ones would be the first flip that I did. Typically, when you're a brand new flipper, you go out there and get hard money. The hard money lenders typically they'll do, if they work with first time flippers.
What's a hard money lender?
So hard money lender are folks that typically when you're doing a flip house, right, it's so dilapidated you can't get bank financing for it. So hard money lenders are there. They've got cash stockpiled. They're usually experienced investors, and they will look at the project. They understand flips like banks don't. So they're comfortable lending on that project for an increased interest amount, right? Typically these days, a hard money loan is going anywhere from 10% in 1 point to I see them, 18 and 4 points, sometimes. But the reason that money is expensive is because it's risky, right? But they understand flips. So you can go get a hard money loan from these folks and do that project.
So that's kind of like where somebody needs to get over the finish line. They just can't have traditional funding. The project's at 87%, and they just need to get there, and the return is very, very close, but it is collateralized, right? You're not like you're taking risk.
Yeah, typically their home lender is collateralizing on the property. Yeah. And it's from the start. Usually, sometimes you'll have folks that'll get into a property, spend all their money, and they need to finish it. That is a situation too. But some folks will go into it knowing what hard money costs, and they build that into their work, and that they do it from hard money from the start.
So if somebody has a track record with flipping, so it's almost like maybe you moved up the food chain a little bit, where you said, yeah, I can look at these projects, I can be involved with them, I get good return, I'm collateralized, and I'm involved with building my network with somebody, helping them get there. But is that kind of what you're doing with real estate, at least, is with hard money?
Yeah, reputation is huge in the real estate industry, and integrity, obviously, right? In most industries that should be, right? But especially in real estate, I think because a lot of our stuff it's self-run, right? We're not involving banks, we're not involving institutions that are double checking stuff, or the safety it's us. It's our underwriting skills. It's the hard money lenders' underwriting skills. But yeah, so if you've done 5 or more flips, these lenders are more apt to lend to you, right? Because they know or think we've had success. So first-time home flipper is not going to sometimes doesn't get lending at all from hard money lenders. And if they do, it's 60%, 70% of LTV, and like 80% of your rehab, maybe purchase and then rehab. My first one I got 100% funding for the purchase and the rehab, because the lender knew me, knew my partners, and our project was solid. So that was one of the biggest wins, I think.
Yeah, that's cool. So any other advice for an entrepreneur that wants to get into flipping? I ran into somebody yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want to be just like Joel. He was young. And, I said, oh, cool. I said, well, he was a young guy. And I was like, make sure your credit's great. If you want to start it, take care of that. Don't worry about anything else. Just get that straight.
That definitely helps. Absolutely.
Because you got to go. And by the way, it might be a primary, it might be a duplex. You might be living in the basement, it might be a rental, but first and foremost, you're going to get probably something a little more traditional. And then, once you have a successful project or two, you wait the 2 years, or then you can go on to something else. And, I don't think he was expecting that, but I was like, yeah, man, just take care of your credit. You could have a really good credit score, and you can work. If you don't, then you need lots of cash, and no one's going to risk anything with you, and it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, real estate investing it's crazy. There's tons of different avenues inside of real estate investing. Most people's experience is HGTV, right? So they think flipping is what a lot of people come to the industry thinking they're going to do. Flipping is risky, as compared to a lot of the other verticals or, paths you can take in real estate investing.
Yeah.
Flipping is risky. Usually when I sit down with folks, there's a few things I tell them to kind of start with, right? How much money do you have that you're okay investing, right? It's a risk. So make sure it's not like a HELOC that they're going to take your house over if you mess this project up. Right. What skill sets do you have, or what family members or friends do you have that could lend themselves to a certain aspect in investing? So if you have a brother has a general contracting company that does great work, that's probably a good setup for you to start flipping.
So what about business planning? I made this point last month, where your first set of investors are those friends and family, and you really need to, not just say, hey, I need to borrow some money. You really should be able to justify, even a streamlined business plan. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs on business planning, even when they're going to that first comfortable tier of people that love them, care about them, and are willing to take a risk, but would want to return? Any advice on business planning?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I love watching Shark Tank.
Yeah.
So I think if you're going to go pitch someone, you better know your industry and your numbers and that project cold, right? So build your knowledge base up as much as possible. That's why a lot of the times folks will tell people to kind of specialize in a certain avenue in investing or whatever they're doing. So you get good at that, right? You get that knowledge base on that. And I think that's huge. There's so many business planning tools out there, Grok and ChatGPT and all the AI and stuff out there.
That's great, yeah.
Cutting hours off the time that is required to do this kind of planning.
Oh, yeah.
So I would say knowledge base, right? It's probably the big one there. Know your project and your industry, and that's a big thing to start with.
was the first pitch you had to your wife? Was she your first?
Basically, yeah.
So how did you handle the first pitch to your wife?
Yeah. So my wife was super risk adverse. She works in the insurance world. Didn't have any of the investing knowledge that I did when we started having these conversations. Didn't listen to any of the podcasts. Right. Didn't see what my brain was seeing. And so I had to sit down and make sure I had the industry knowledge to explain to her how me wholesaling was going to work, to explain the legalities, show her the attorney that I was using to make my contracts and do these deals, let her talk to folks that had done it, show her the website and stuff where I was getting my information. And it's building trust. And luckily, knock on wood, I haven't lost any money on this and any of the deals that I've done personally yet. So that also helped with the confidence building.
So when you reflect back and you start, again, forestry, high school, forestry, Marine Corps, war zone, construction, do you get sentimental where you say, look, I zigged and zagged? Do you admire people that say, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, and that's what they go do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that thing's
got to go like this, but it's the same path, but it's like zigging and zagging.
Yeah.
I feel like you're still zigging and zagging.
Not so much anymore. Yeah. I love real estate investing.
Yeah.
And I love, it sounds cheesy. I love helping people.
Yeah.
And investing is a great industry to be able to do that. Whether you're talking about, flipping houses where you're helping that homeowner get out of foreclosure, you're fixing that house up and you're selling it to some new family that needs a house to live in, or you're talking about bringing in investor capital to help them leverage their cash and make higher returns than a typical bank account will. So I love that. And just meeting new people and successful investors and hearing their stories. It's really awesome.
And I guess I'm getting back to the zigzag because it's not a bad thing. I've done it.
Yeah.
We're at Cool's in 5 years. We didn't talk about me at all, but I got through college. I think it really helps.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think it helps, and I think you're at a point where, I'm not saying you're where you're meant to be, where
right.
God meant you to be, but are there, so I just think that people should be open to that, to say, hey, what have I learned? Where am I heading with this?
Yeah.
Should I, because we have a lot of people actually ring spaces that do side gigs and they're trying to get it going and they get a little bit of space here. And,
mm-hmm.
or we just met, we have actually an organization called WellFed coming in to do a podcast with us. So WellFed, 23 months, an employee in the government, getting doged, and ended up starting what will be a not-for-profit, but it's been a huge success.
Mm-hmm.
And they're helping 260, employees, that are helping with the resume. They're helping, we're donating some space here for federal employees that, need coaching or need help or
right.
need access to, obviously jobs that are around. So I always say that, shit happens for a reason. Most times it's good. It just
mm-hmm.
takes time to figure it out. And I just think in the course of a career, either like in a Marine Corps career, you just stay in, and
right.
you do what you're told and you get promoted when you do, or you also can pivot smartly
mm-hmm.
and end up being a lot more well-rounded person and a lot better entrepreneur. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Especially if you're going to end up in the entrepreneurial world. I think if you're going to be a doctor, an engineer, and that kind of stuff, and you're down that road, and you like that, you love it.
Yeah,
I think that's perfect. Build that whole
very efficient.
Yeah, build that whole knowledge base up. That's great. Stay in that industry.
No wasted steps.
But I think, yeah, to your point, if you have experience like I do, I mean, I tap into a lot of my different experiences, and it helps me in multiple avenues. It helps me relate with people because I have that diverse background. I'm not just a real estate investor, so I'm not just connecting with people on that. So it definitely helps, I think.
Yeah, I think you also, because you have those skills, it gives you confidence to say, well, if a huge roadblock, a pandemic, something happens,
right,
I'm going to be okay.
Right.
I can pivot. I can put sand in walls and make,
right.
bunker barriers for people if I need to, and,
right.
and turn a profit. So that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree with that aspect too. Yeah, just from a basic humanity standpoint, people are creatures of habit. We hate change.
Right.
People don't want to do it. We don't like it. We like having our routine. That's why we go to Starbucks every morning and get our same coffee and whatnot. But if you can handle and deal with change or choose change sometimes and manage that transitionary period, manage your kind of fear and emotions in those changes, the more that happens to you, the kind of better you get at that, which does lead you to being able to keep a cooler head, I think, when problems do arise. Yeah.
So if somebody is, seeing some success as an entrepreneur, What advice? I mean, I always say, well, don't rent an office. Don't sign a 5-year lease.
Right.
Don't get 2,000 square feet when you might need 6 in 18 months, or you might need 1,200 square feet. You just don't know.
Right.
What advice do you have for somebody as they just start to scale a little bit?
Yeah, scaling is always the tough one, right? A lot of it I think is industry specific. Like, do you know you've got some big POs coming that you need to scale for and to? Are you just projecting your business to double in the next 18 months? What do you have to do for that? Yeah, it's real tricky. I would say a lot of times what I would say most of the time I see people kind of underscale what they need. Like most of the time I think they could have done another 20% scaling, and that would have held them on for maybe 2 years instead of that 1 year. Then they have to change and scale again.
Yeah.
If that kind of makes sense.
I just think certainly, like I said, in ring spaces where you have people come here because they can get at least a year under their belt. That's not an incubator, but the community is here. Where do you recommend the resources? Where is the knowledge in town other than your lawyer and your accountant? Where can people get good advice? I mean, I know obviously you tell me a little bit about your networking groups. Is that?
Yeah, sure. Advice about just business in general.
Yeah. If you need a round table of people to chat with, any resources that you think that people should use?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a handful of great business consultants in town here that I know personally that do a great job and have good track records.
Yeah.
The SBA office at Mary Wash, they have a pretty good team over there of helping new businesses kind of get established and sharing resources with them. There are a couple business attorneys in town that can help people, whether you're acquiring a business or you're being acquired or you're trying to scale or add people, add employees. There's some good business attorneys in town. I'd say there isn't like one specific group in town that has that like together that you could one-stop shopping. I mean, SBA would be a good place to start probably if you're a new business.
But if anybody, even it's specific to real estate or building or flipping or lending or what's your group? What's your group on Facebook? Or
yeah, so I have a monthly networking group focused around real estate investing. It's free; it always will be. That one, I have a speaker come talk every month about varying subjects, and I really enjoy that group. So I wanted to create a place where investors could learn together and do deals. And I do an annual conference too now. So this year will be our 3rd year. Last year we had someone sign a deal at the lunch table, which is amazing.
Yeah. Wow.
So that one's good. So that's the last Tuesday of every month, 6 p.m., 911 Charles Street. But yeah, and that's a good mix of folks too, because of the business, the general networking I do in town here. It's not just investors that are in that room. It's a good mix of all those support companies that feed real estate investing too.
Okay, so as far as networking, we're getting back to that. How long does it take to develop that network? How much of your, let's say you have a 40-hour week, and I know you don't, but what percentage of your time is networking?
I'm probably spending 5 to 6 hours a week at physical meetings, and then probably another 5 to 6 doing one-on-ones each week. Whether that's a call, Zoom, in person. I prefer in person, but that's probably about it.
Yeah, so that again, it's probably not taking you down to 32 work hours.
Right, yeah, it is.
It's probably
I work more than 40 a week.
So again, it occurs to me as I look, I think there's the key of the discipline, certainly from the Marines, the consistency, the motivation, and a spidey sense of, certainly aligning with people where you feel the productivity is there. That you're seeding, good relationships versus not working. There's just a lot of that, and I'm not poo-pooing anything. I'm just
absolutely.
But I just want people to be aware of it. It's like you got to find the groups that really matter to you.
Yes,
you got to go in with no preconditions. You got to be willing to help and listen, and certainly extend the hand. And things do happen. Your first deal, second deal. It's just, if you do get a sense that you're just spinning your wheels, you got to be smart and move on.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's kind of to your earlier point. What people do. Yeah, if people just, like I said, getting that rhythm, they go to that networking meeting every week. They don't really do anything. They're not doing the one-on-ones, and they're just in that rut and that rhythm.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so especially the investing, my networking group, one of my main motivations was to see like who the integral, trustworthy people were in town that were investing, who the trustworthy contractors are, who the good hard money lenders are, all that kind of stuff. So if you do it correctly and intentionally, you can find that those teammates that you want to work with, and you'll make partnerships that aren't going to work out sometimes. And that's that's all part of doing business. You gotta try before you can figure out who you can trust.
Yeah. Okay. So let's bring it all the way home now. So you're a Marine. You're getting near getting out. You've done your time. What advice do you have for a young mid 20s NCO? Maybe maybe not. What advice do you have them when they come from Quantico to Fredericksburg?
Yeah.
How do they become entrepreneurial? Any advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of good options. I think one of the best things, and not even just for the military, but anyone, is find a mentor, find someone that's doing what you want to be doing, and find a way to provide value to them, or just try to find a way to get around them, just to learn from them, see what they're doing. Shortcut your mistakes by learning the mistakes they made. And then our access to information is infinite these days.
Yeah, it's unprecedented.
I mean, just get smart on whatever you're trying to do. Listen to the podcasts while you're doing dishes or cooking or driving or whatever.
Yeah.
Just build that knowledge base up.
Yeah, awesome. Now you went and worked with Joel.
Yeah.
Joel's a Marine.
Yep.
Was that a good combination with the two of you? Was that?
Oh, it's great. Yeah. So Victor, who runs our fund, he's also a Marine, right?
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
It's great, even subtly, right? In our conversations, we can say certain stuff that they understand what we're saying, or using Marine jargon, and we just have that base layer of integrity and trust and knowledge with each other, which definitely helps.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I really we're at our time.
Okay.
You know what I said was we're gonna save the best for first. So you're a heavy hitter around here, and really everybody wanted to hear from you. I appreciate your patience. We were a little futzing with the camera. Thank you, Marcus.
Great stuff, you guys.
Yeah, we're going to only getting better. We're still plugging everything in, and we're all sweating here a little bit because of the air conditioner. But thanks again for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. Thanks for having me.
Enjoy the stick. It's on me.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. And certainly, like I said, we're going to keep progressing with these, and you'll see them come out shortly. And we're going to have just a lot of different Marine entrepreneurs come on. So I'm grateful for you for coming and telling your stories.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Some personal information, but we appreciate your sharing. And we do encourage people to come check out Ring Spaces. You can also, use a free day pass. It's freedaypass.ringspaces.com if you want to check it out, and certainly see the podcast studio is open to the public if you guys want to use it. So thanks a lot for coming today.
Good stuff. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Neil on Business. If today's episode hit home, do me a favor. Leave a review, share it with a friend, and subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next. And if you're ready to lead with clarity, courage, and confidence, keep showing up. Until next time, stay sharp, stay focused, and keep building. Again, this is Neil Darling from Ring Spaces Studio, and this is Neil on Business. We'll see you next time.